Easter frog. What? It's not the Easter bunny. It's a frog now. What if like that would be so creepy though. Like if it's like a humanoid frog, just like just spitting out like Easter eggs. You hear like rummaging. You're like, oh, it must be the Easter bunny. And then you just walk down and you just see this like frog just like with those giant eyes, just like. And you're just like, what? Euclid. All 111 specimens of SCP-1325 currently in the Foundation's possession are housed in a large paludarium at Bio-Research Area 7. The temperature and humidity of the paludarium are to be kept constant at ranges of 25 to 30 degrees Celsius and 50 to 60% respectively, and the specimens are to be fed 2 to 3 times a week on crickets, locusts, earthworms, and baby mice. Any eggs laid by the specimens during Easter are to be given to research staff, whereupon they will either be used for research, fed to Class D personnel in order to propagate SCP-1325, or destroyed. SCP-1325 is a species of frog which resembles the Australian green tree frog, Littoria carrulea. Genetic analysis confirms that it is closely related to L. carrulea. Foundation zoologists have named it the Easter frog, Littoria pasha. All specimens... Where is my... There it is. All specimens are anatomically and genetically male. As such, it does not sexually reproduce. Aren't frogs the type of species that can change their sexes? Or am I completely... I might be wrong. I might be fully wrong with that. All specimens are anatomically and genetically, such as on Palm Sunday, defined by the start of the week before the first full moon after March 21st, an egg will start to grow from the back of every adult specimens of SCP-1325. This frog is a half Bulbasaur. The egg will develop over the course of the Holy Week until early morning of Easter Sunday, when it will detach from SCP-1325's back. Easter will always begin to develop on Palm Sunday and be laid on Easter Sunday, regardless of which dates these holidays fall on any given year. Most cases of SCP-1325 have been in countries Australia, New Zealand, and the USA, where the vast majority of the population celebrates Easter and does so on the date of the first full moon after March 21st. The only exception are 2 cases in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. While Easter is not celebrated in any form in most of Papua New Guinea, Port Moresby has adopted Western culture to a considerably greater extent than the rest of the county, and thus this does not rule out the possibility that SCP-1325's reproductive cycle is determined by the local structure. The hard protective shell of the egg consists of a thick layer of substance which is identical to chocolate in taste, appearance, and texture, presumably in order to promote human consumption. I'm not sure about you guys, but... Actually, I'm not going to drink. But if a frog in front of me was producing a chocolate egg from its back, as a Swiss man who loves its chocolate, I would not eat that. If I saw that in front of me, if I just saw a frog like a chocolate egg, even if it's a Kinder Surprise, if it came from a frog's back, I'm not going to eat it. I don't want to end up like drawn together when they all licked the frog's back and got high as fuck. But in this case, I don't get high, I die potentially, or something happens to me. Inside the egg is a cluster of more than a dozen small jelly-like eggs, similar to those of normal amphibians, which are nourished and sustained by the yolk sac and albumin. Given that they are clones of the parent, all eggs are genetically identical. Traces of the benzodiazepine derivative drug prosipam have been detected in the yolk sac and albumin. It is thought that prosipam's anxiolytic and sedative properties facilitate human consumptions by rendering subjects oblivious to the egg's content. When the egg is fully developed and ready to detach, SCP-1325 will seek out sites where it's likely to attract human consumption. Oh, he wants to. He's like, hey, got a delicious egg on my back. How about you take a big fat bite from it? Typically among similar-looking confectionery before depositing it. The fact that SCP-1325 is able to strategically position its eggs, combined with the fact that it is able to time its reproductive cycles to coincide with Easter, suggests that it is unusually intelligent for an amphibian. However, its behavior outside of its reproductive cycle is identical to that of L. carriyng. The egg will remain viable for 2 to 4 days after being detached from SCP-1325. If and when it is ingested by a human subject, the eggs within that survived ingestion will hatch into tadpoles in response to the temperature and pH of the stomach. The tadpoles then attach themselves to the walls of the stomach via small hooks on the tips of the tails to prevent themselves from passing through the pylorus into the duodenum along with the chyme. Over the following 10 to 12 days, the tadpoles will feed on the partly digested food in the chyme as they grow into and metamorph into mature specimens of SCP-1325. During this period, the human host will likely experience abdominal discomfort, diarrhea, and loss of appetite to varying degrees of severity. Oh boy, that does not sound good. Jay would like this one, maybe. Jay might find this one interesting at least. When SCP-1325 specimens are fully developed and able to survive outside the stomach, they will secrete emetic toxins from the skin, thereby inducing heavy vomiting in the host, which allows them to exit the stomach. It's like when one recently buffed a bunch of snails, but instead of snails, it's frogs. They will also secrete large volumes of mucus in order to lubricate the passage up to the esophagus. The host will experience Borhave syndrome, esophageal rupture in around 25% of cases. There's a large footnote. This figure is probably an underestimate because it is largely based on data derived from Class D personnel. As the Class D personnel are adults and the vast majority are in the 20s, 30s, there is little data on children and the elderly groups, which can reasonably be expected to be more vulnerable, which skews the statistics downwards. The likelihood of Borhave's syndrome is greater in cases where the host contains a large number of SCP-1325 specimens due to the high proportion of the eggs having survived ingestion, and cases where the specimens have remained in the stomach for longer than is typical and have thus grown quite large. In cases where both these factors are present, the likelihood of Borhave's syndrome is close to 100%. Once the specimens have exited the host, they will continue to grow for around 6 months before reaching adult size. That is terrifying, but also hilarious. It's just growing a chocolate egg and just goes around to deploy it somewhere, hoping that you will eat it. That's like the hilarious part, but the worrisome part is definitely a bunch of frogs are growing inside your stomach. And then after a while, they just like do something that makes you go, and next thing you know, just a bunch of frogs coming out of your mouth, and you just stare like, imagine being the person just like, is that a frog? Another one? What is happening? You know what I mean? Like, that would be terrifying to deal with.